Follow me back to 1946. Europe is ruined. China is still a backwater. The US puts together an alliance that allows everyone within it to trade goods into the US without significant trade barriers. This allows for Europe to export their way back to prosperity after World War II. It gives them room to grow their economies beyond what their somewhat depleted populations will allow. In addition to allowing the free flow of goods, the US becomes a security guarantor of the free world by using our Navy to police the world's oceans and enable low-risk, and hence low-cost, global trade. But there was a condition. In order to deal with the US, you had to be on our side in helping to combat and contain the Soviet Union. Essentially, the US traded some of its economic and manufacturing capacity for increased security and strategic assets to assist in the Cold War. Only one problem. We won. The Soviet flag went down in 1991, and we didn't really make any changes to the world order. George H.W. Bush tried to reinvent the system, and we booted him out of office after a single term. Since then, the people of the U.S. have voted overwhelmingly for candidates who focus on domestic rather than foreign issues. The system limped along for another few decades, primarily because of the U.S.'s massive demand for oil and energy resources. Enter shale. Since around 2007, net U.S. energy imports have been in sharp decline because we discovered how to process shale into oil and natural gas. And boy, do we have a lot of shale. Within a year or two, the U.S. will become a net energy exporter, meaning we no longer give a fuck what's going on in the Middle East. Meaning we can bring our troops back. Notice the institutional outrage over Trump pulling troops out of Syria? This is why. They're terrified of the current world order collapsing. To drive home the point, for the past half-century or so, the U.S. has kept a naval carrier group in the Gulf Sea at all times to protect Saudi oil exports. But more recently, the past few years, it's only been there 6 months out of the year. We're done protecting the world and getting nothing in return. As you can see by the foreign heads of state visiting Trump, Shinzo Abe knows he needs America's help, so he brings a $500 billion investment for U.S. infrastructure and manufacturing with him. Good play. Theresa May knows she needs America's help, so she offers to sail the Royal Navy's 2 brand new supercarriers with the U.S. fleet, and offers to share intel from Britain's intelligence services, who recently had their budgets doubled. Good play. Xi Jinping knows America is not going to help him, so he puts everything on the table, from IP law, to the trade deficit, to product dumping, to North Korean denuclearization. Also, we went going for the kill right then and there. Best play he had. Angela Merkel doesn't know or doesn't think she needs America's help. So she shows up telling Trump, if you do this, it will be the end of Europe. And he hands her a $300 billion for services rendered. She didn't bring anything to the table. Bad play. So where are we now? As previously mentioned, the US is the least globally integrated economy by percentage of GDP. We're evolving into a global superpower with no global interests. It's not a Trump thing. It's a geographic thing. It would have happened no matter who won the office. But with Trump, it's happening faster. When we leave the world stage, the world will go back to doing what it did before we showed up, to save them in the war. Namely, fighting over breadcrumbs. No other navy on the planet has the ability to protect the world's shipping lanes. much less the motivation to do so. At current build-out rates, the rest of the world's naval forces combined won't catch up with the US until 2063. China doesn't even have a blue water navy, meaning that they can't operate long-term outside of China's sphere of influence. If we stop protecting the ships that China relies on for food, and for oil, and for sending us trillions of dollars worth of dildos, and $30 microwaves that break in 2 months after purchase, their economy, government, and nation collapses. This is even assuming the Iranians don't initiate a war with the Sauds over control of the oil production infrastructure, which they will if we aren't there to intervene. What's more, the US is the largest and wealthiest consumer import market on the planet. And since the Europeans forgot how to have babies back in the 70s, will remain so for decades to come. China needs us to buy whatever they can sell, because they simply don't have any other customers who can buy as much as we do. And the money they get from us is leveraged into shadow loans handed out by the Chinese banks to anyone who can promise employment. Not profit, and not a working product. Employment. Because if people have jobs, they are less likely to march into the capital and hang their politicians. Remember the Obama stimulus package? $800 billion. And all the corruption and wasteful spending that goes along with that kind of top-down spending. The Chinese government loans out that much money every 7 days. And that doesn't work anymore. The hourly wage in China has octupled in the past decade. They're 2 times as expensive as Mexico now. It's no wonder factories are reshoring to the US and Mexico. They know the end is coming. Smart money's already out of the country. They're just trying. They only beat us on trade the past few decades because we let them. We're not letting them anymore. Globalization is over. Free trade is over. The rest of the world riding on America's back is over. Atlas is shrugging. And any Europeans here, I'm not trying to be mean. I don't have anything against you. But you can't expect a free ride to last forever. And you guys really, really shouldn't have stopped having kids. Once your boomer equivalents retire, and you don't have the tax base to pay for their benefits, or the young consumers to drive the economy, you're looking at decades of stagnation, spending cuts, and tax increases. Incidentally, this is why the EU is importing migrants as fast as they possibly can. Gotta have somebody to put on the bottom to keep the pyramid scheme going just a little while longer.